My name is Michael. For most of my life, I've been a mechanical engineer, the kind that builds things with his hands and fixes whatever breaks. After my divorce 5 years ago, I moved into a small, quiet apartment complex just outside of town. It's the kind of place where no one asks too many questions, and that suited me just fine. My days were simple. Morning started with bitter black coffee and the creak of the old vinyl player. I'd tinker in the garage, keep my tools clean, organized bolts by size just to pass the time. Nights were for books and bourbon. Solitude became a habit, not a punishment. That all changed the day I heard footsteps moving into the apartment above me. She came in late one Saturday. I was sitting by the window, smoking a cigarette, when I saw a cab pull up. The trunk popped open, and out stepped a young woman dragging two heavy suitcases. She was maybe mid-20s, shoulder-length auburn hair, wearing an oversized denim jacket and dark boots. There was something in her posture, confident, but wary, like she'd seen things people her age shouldn't. The next morning, I met her in the stairwell. She smiled, her eyes locking onto mine like she already knew something about me. "Hi," she said, voice light but steady. "I'm Emma, just moved in upstairs." I nodded. "Michael, nice to meet you." She tilted her head. "If you ever hear me playing music too loud, feel free to bang on the ceiling. I'll get the message." We both chuckled. Just neighborly politeness. Or so I thought. Over the next few days, I noticed her patterns, or rather, the lack of them. She rarely left the apartment during daylight, but I'd hear muffled conversations late at night. Not parties, more like arguments. At times, it sounded like she was talking to herself. Then, one night, I heard a man's voice, deep, controlled. He said something I couldn't quite catch, but it was enough to make me turn off the TV and listen. Something about clearing the trace and don't screw this up. The next day, I saw no one come or go. I started leaving my door open when I heard movement, just cracked, so I could catch a glimpse. One evening, I watched as a man in a black jacket came down the back stairs from her apartment. He had no business being there. That night, I knocked on her door. She opened it, looking surprised, or pretending to. "Hey, Michael, everything okay?" I shrugged, heard a noise, wanted to make sure you were all right. Emma looked at me for a long moment before stepping aside. "You want to come in?" Her apartment was stark. One couch, a desk with dual monitors, no decorations, no pictures. One wall was covered with soundproof padding. "You work in audio?" I asked. She smiled, but didn't answer. We sat. We drank wine. She told me about her life, half-truths that sounded well-rehearsed. Said she was studying behavioral science. Said she liked old music. Said she preferred older men because they were less messy. And then she kissed me. I was surprised by how natural it felt. I hadn't been with anyone since my ex-wife, but something about this felt wrong, like stepping into a snare you don't see until it's too late. She leaned back after the kiss, her eyes scanning my reaction. "You're different, Michael, I can tell." We saw each other more after that. She'd come down for coffee. I'd help her carry groceries. One night, she fell asleep on my couch. Her presence was chaotic but intoxicating. She'd leave in the middle of the night sometimes. Once, she came back with a bruise on her shoulder. I asked. She said she tripped. I didn't believe her. One afternoon, I came home to find my apartment had been searched. Not ransacked, just examined. Drawers slightly off. A notebook moved an inch. Whoever did it knew what they were looking for, but I had nothing to hide. I went upstairs that evening, not to ask, but to confront. Emma opened the door, but before I could speak, she pressed her finger to her lips. She pulled me inside, closed the door, and led me to the couch. "I need to tell you something," she whispered, "but you have to promise me you won't go to the police. You can't trust them." What she told me then changed everything. Emma wasn't a student. She worked for a private intelligence firm, a third-party contractor used by governments, corporations, and sometimes people with enough money to erase entire histories. Her role was to get close to targets, earn trust, and gather information. Her current assignment was our landlord. Apparently, he'd been funneling money through shell companies to fund illegal surveillance tech. "You were never a target," she said, "until you started asking questions." She told me they wanted her to cut contact with me, that I was a variable. "But I didn't," she said, "because I trust you." That night, she left. Not just my apartment, my life. A week later, a plain envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. On it were folders, labeled audio logs, photos, contracts, blackmail. The last file was a voice message from Emma. Michael, if you're hearing this, I've gone underground. I'm sorry. You were the only real thing in all of this. What you do next is your choice. But don't be silent, not like the others. Now, I sit here every night, wondering if I should send what's on that drive to someone who can use it, or bury it and pretend none of this happened. She moved into the apartment above me, and then she vanished. But what she left behind still echoes through the walls.